The following is a Hoop Ball presentation. Welcome to the Fantasy NBA Today podcast.
It is Fantasy NBA Today time. It is Tuesday, I think. But really, who's counting at this point? I'm Dan Vespers, and he is Vince Miracle. Yes, your two general hosts. We're back together after a nice long weekend. Vince, what's going on, my man? It's been only 1 week, but for me, it feels like about 2.5 months, and I'll explain why soon. How was your weekend?
Not too bad, not too bad. I actually, if you guys follow me on Twitter at VM Center, do a nice little plug there.
That's a nice plug, yeah.
Thank you. I actually got my girl actually got me tickets to a movie that I really wanted to see. She got special screening tickets, and I just found out that I'm allowed to talk about it. Is that we actually got to watch The Magnificent Seven yesterday.
Oh, how was it?
I'm telling you this right now, that movie is awesome.
So
it was a really good remake of a remake.
That's what I was going to say. So there obviously was Magnificent Sevens prior to this one, but you've got some pretty big names in this cast. How are they, and I know this isn't really what people are listening for, but now I'm curious, how are they able to sort of slot all of these big names into a movie that's been done before? There have been so many remakes over the last decade, and I've hated most of them. But you say this one was good, and I have to admit I'm a little bit excited about it.
Oh, I'll tell you, there hasn't been a good Western in a very long time. I know they try to do it with Jane Got a Gun. They tried to do it with, what's it called? I can't think of the movie, but as a big old grizzly beard, go chase after a girl. That wasn't that good of a movie either. So then you look at this movie, I was like, okay, you got Denzel, you got Chris Pratt, Ethan Hawke's in this movie, Vincent D'Onofrio, who was in Daredevil, he was in it, and they really did a good job of introducing these characters in their own way. Some of them just slide in, and they just do it so well. Like, you never feel like you're watching stars. You feel like you're just watching these characters. And I thought that was what's really cool about this movie. And then you grow to like all of them. And some of the best parts of the movie is when all the Magnificent Seven is together and they're just talking and BSing with each other. So
wait, how are you able to see this before it actually came out? No, you don't have to. You can't tell.
People.
Yeah,
you got people who know some people who know some people.
Jeez, Vince, you've gotten important over the last few months. I feel like I'm missing out on things here.
Oh no, this is my girlfriend. So
well,
she got more important than me.
Well, good. Congratulations. That's the best way to live. Find somebody who's better than you, and pin them down.
Exactly. I just got lucky one day.
Yeah,
she for some reason thought I was attractive.
You and me both,
like,
man.
Bam! I'm gonna stay with this guy. Now I gave her a kid, and now she can't go anywhere.
Life is about outkicking your coverage, if nothing else. So for everybody that's been listening over the last couple of months, I've told bits and pieces of the story, and I guess I can rehash just a little bit of it. I have, up until a couple days ago, worked for the Bakersfield Blaze, the minor league team in Bakersfield, California, minor league baseball, I should say. And about a month ago, the Minor League Baseball's National Association announced that Bakersfield and High Desert, which is in a city called Adelanto near Victorville, California. And for people across the globe, there's no reason why you should know of Adelanto. You've probably heard of Bakersfield. But those two franchises have been contracted now, which means that effectively anybody who worked for those two teams, their jobs were eliminated. And I'm one of them. So over this last weekend, Vince, and this is why it feels like forever for me, we actually had a garage sale for a baseball team, which is just a crazy concept. But when we got eliminated from the playoffs, when the Blaze did, I should say, I don't actually play for the team, last Monday, the next 4 or 5 days were spent pretty much unhooking and unbolting and ungluing and untaping anything in that stadium from 75 years of history, and it pretty much all got sold over the weekend. So it's a hull now. There's nothing there. It's a chassis of a baseball organization. I moved to Los Angeles, or back to LA, yesterday, And as a result, Vince was kind enough to let me sneak in a quick shower before we recorded this thing, because I stunk like you wouldn't believe. It's hot in the Central Valley still. So
I was smelling you through the computer.
You would have, my man. You would have. I had the gall to go to a doctor's appointment earlier today without having bathed from the previous morning, and that just was unkind of me, because it was like a cartoon. You could see the 3 little green scent lines following me around everywhere I went. But I am ready to roll now. I am cleaned up. The air conditioning is on in my apartment. The dog is sleeping to my left. I'm home. And it's time for me to dig back into basketball. I haven't been able to apply myself the way that I would have liked to, and I'm excited to finally get back to digging in deep.
And you're coming at the right time, Dan, because we're probably right around, 2-3 weeks away from draft season. We're probably about 2 weeks away from preseason. And next week is, I believe, the start of media day and training camp.
Yeah, man,
for a lot of these teams.
This is a fantastic time. We're a month out roughly from the start of the NBA season, a little bit more than that, maybe 5 weeks or so. But yeah, Vince, it's good timing. Minor League Baseball actually slots itself into the schedule of other sports really, really well, because it's just a little bit shorter than the big league season, which does draw into October and through the month, or the playoffs and stuff like that, and it starts before the end of the basketball season. Now, obviously, I don't work for that minor league team anymore, but timing-wise, I'm ready to roll. So with that in mind, Vince, we've got a few things to cover today. Our main topic on this show is something we touched upon last Tuesday, and that's the idea of the Goofy League. That is a league that has rules that are not standard, or even a slight adjustment on standard, that require a little bit of extra attention. So I'm going to save that for a moment, and I want to start by giving a quick shout-out to Hoopball, because I didn't mention that at the opener. Hoopball continues to grow, Vince. You guys had a live show over the weekend. The draft guide is still rumbling strong. Can you, since you've been knee-deep in it while I've been knee-deep in trying to clean out a baseball stadium, give everybody the quick rundown again on what's going on over there. What's the latest?
So we did a rough show on Saturday. Me and we practiced it. It was a nice little practice show, trying to figure out how it was going to work. Believe we got right around 45 people watching live for something that we didn't even really promote, except for that last episode of last week. So I want to thank everyone who came over and watched the show. And we actually got 3 new subscribers on that Saturday because of that show. So we appreciate you guys subscribing. So we're working on making the show better. We saw some flaws in it. We're making it better, and that show should be coming out on a consistent basis, more than just one day a week. And you can see some revolving faces in there with myself. You'll see Aaron and a lot of our other experts. As for the draft guide, I know we had quite a bit of sales over the weekend. So again, appreciate all the support that you guys are giving us. I know that they released the rookie tiers, where rookies are landing in 8-cat and 9-cat leagues. I know they've released their busts. We talked about it on Thursday's show with Schifferly, some of the sleepers for this upcoming season, and we only went down to I think 3 or 4 of them, and they have an entire list that had some names on there where you'll go, wow, okay, I can see that. I can, and I'll even say some of this, some of these guys that are on these lists would be like, wow, I can't even believe I didn't even look at that guy. A lot of these people will say that.
And that's the reason to go out and get something like this, because most folks don't have the time to pore over all of the information the way that you guys are right now. And I realize that this is a sales pitch. There's no disguising that. There's no reason to try to deny that that's what's happening in this moment. But it really is a useful piece of information. It's a useful booklet of information. What kind of sale is going? Are we at 11 right now? 11.99? I forget where we were sitting.
So I know. I think it was Aaron who was on the wire that day, who was on the Twitter sphere. I know it was either Aaron or the person working the wire, and it came from the top down and everything like that. So it's not like it was a lie. But during the Vikings and I believe Packers, because my team lost to that team. During that game, there was a vote. It was Vikings and somebody. Yeah, the Vikings lost. I can't remember what it was. Vikings Packers, because it was my team. Anyways, long story short, there was a vote, and you guys had to vote for the right winner, and they'd extend the amount for $11.99. Well, Vikings were down to 28%, while the Packers were up to like 60%, and rightfully so, because my team should have won. But the Vikings held it out, and then we said, well, that one was impressive, so we said, screw it. We're gonna extend it for another week. So for this week, the draft guide is still at $11.99. So you guys definitely go out there and go purchase it at that low price while you can.
Yeah, it's worth it. Simple enough. You don't. We could talk about it all day, and maybe there'll be a show where we do, and people will tune us out and never listen again. But it's so useful. I know personally, I've used Aaron Brewski's information for many years. And now to kind of be a part of that is extremely exciting for me, but I can give it a big thumbs up. And he's got everybody filling in all the details. He puts a skeleton in there, and you guys get to paint all the organs and the blood vessels and all that good stuff for the Hoopball Draft Guide. We had one piece of basketball news this week, Vince. I know we're again kind of skating slowly towards the important time of year with drafts coming up in a couple of weeks. And that is old Giannis. He's a very rich young man.
Yeah, that the age of 20, not even 21, 4 year got extended for 4 years at $100 million. And honestly, I can't help but kind of agree with the Bucks on purchasing a talented small forward as himself. I mean, Giannis Antetokounmpo is going to be an amazing player in this league just because of the things that he can do. The Greek Freak, he has that nickname for a reason. And as long as he can start learning how to knock down some jumpers with some consistency and possibly extend his range to the three-point line, I mean, just look out, because he can rebound, he can pass, he can run, he can block shots, he plays defense, he plays both ends of the floor. He's long, he's lengthy, he can play 1 through 4, and I'm really intrigued. I'm really intrigued to see what his fantasy value is going to be this season. I know it's lingering in the early second round. I've even done some mock drafts with some fans out there, and he's going in the first. And I think that may be a little too high for me, but I can't deny that I could see why people are so high on this guy. He's extremely talented.
Yeah, he was a first-round guy over the last couple of weeks of last season, and just kind of looking at his numbers for, and this is, again, a very small sample size, but the final 10 games last year, to see some of the games he put together in there, it's extraordinary. He had a triple-double, 18, 11, and 11, with 2 steals and 3 blocks. He had a 34, 5, and 9 game. He had a 22, 14, and 8 game. He had a 14, 9, and 7, which is somewhat more pedestrian by his standards, but he had 3 steals and 5 blocks in that one. You're talking about a guy who is sort of giving you that Andrei Kirilenko memory flashback, in that he really does do everything, and that includes really nice numbers on the defensive side. So, yeah, that's a guy that in this day and age, with the way that the market was, we can't forget that it was just a few short months ago when Timofey Moskov was given $16 million a year. So another 9 on top of that for Antetokounmpo, a guy that can carry a team at times. That's not crazy at all. He shot over 50% from the field last year. And, by the way, if we're talking about adding a jump shot, over his last 6 games last year, wait for it, he made 10 3-pointers. So he's learning how to shoot from downtown. The percentage would obviously, you'd like it to be a little bit higher, but this kid can do everything. He's a superstar in the making. So I don't think that's a bad move at all. And from a reality standpoint, that's a guy that the Bucks had to grab long term. He's the future of that franchise. So they had no choice. And Vince, 2.6 turnovers, despite all of those impressive numbers. He didn't turn the ball over all that much. That's a number that actually blew me away a little bit when I looked at it.
Yeah, he fills up the stat sheet. He does everything you need a guy that you're picking in that early second round to do, and that's put up big numbers. And he has the potential to be a first-round pick for the entire season. That it's 100% true. He has the ability to get you multiple blocks in a game, multiple steals, rebounds, assists, and points while giving you those nice percentages. I mean, the only thing he really needs to add is that 3-point shot. And if he can knock down, 10 3-pointers within 6 games, I mean, that is so nice to have on your team. So, yeah, I mean, he's in for a really big season. I know there's so much hype around him that it's scaring some owners. I mean, I've talked to a few, and they're like, I don't know if I should be this high on him because there's so much hype around him right now. I mean, it's kind of like the Blake Griffin effect. Blake Griffin got so much hype, and people were scared about drafting him, but yeah, he was still able to put up big numbers. I mean, the same thing's kind of happened with Giannis, and I think, and I think you'd agree with me, Dan, is that Giannis has to be able to, you can look at him and say he has higher upside because of the things that he can do on the floor that Blake Griffin can't.
Yeah, so I mean, the thing with a guy like Antetokounmpo and talking about a lot of these early round guys is that they're just, I mean, you're not going to go wrong with somebody like that. To me, it's a pretty safe play. Even if you reached a little bit, you're not going to get a guy that's a dud. He's still going to give you some pretty good numbers. But what it does, Vince, is it kind of segues into the discussion we were going to have today anyway, which was goofy leagues. And, we got that question on our last show, last Tuesday from Josh Reeves, one of the listeners of the program, who was talking about how his league has a different point system. It's a points league, and he gave us some more specifics between programs now, and I'm just going to run them down real quick. But I want to remind everybody that in this discussion, we're not just talking about Josh's league. And Vince, I'm hoping that you and I can actually go back and forth just a little bit on this topic, which is there are ways to exploit leagues. You just have to find them. So Josh's league, 1 point for points, rebounds, and assists each, -1 for a turnover, 2 for a steal or a block, 3 for a double-double, and 5 for a triple-double. So, Vince, when I hear that, I mean, and this is simple math. You're a DFS guy. DFS weights things when it calculates points. Assists are worth more than 1. Rebounds are worth more than 1. Steals and blocks are worth more than 1. Don't you just look at these numbers from Josh and say, well, which ones are higher and which are lower than the way DFS calculators work, and there's my advantage?
Yeah, I mean, everything that he's doing in his league is exactly what happens in DFS, except the only thing that's different is that assists are 1.5. So that's the only difference of his league compared to anybody else's. And of course, in DFS, they don't do the double-doubles, but you're looking at that stuff and you're saying, okay, points are very valuable. Steals and blocks are very valuable. And having a player that can double-double is extremely valuable. And I'm looking at that. I'm saying, where are the skilled big men at? Because he said in his league it went Cousins 1.
Yeah. Cousins,
and I
Westbrook.
can understand that.
Westbrook was 2, Curry, Harden, and then Durant and Anthony Davis were tied for 5th in his league. So I'm actually inclined to dig even a little bit deeper and say, I mean, even if it's a small number, there are ways to find the edge. So in DFS, Vince, aren't rebounds like 1.2 or something like that, just over 1?
Yeah, I think they're 1.2.
So rebounds are actually devalued slightly in Josh's league as well. Now, not as much as assists, and blocks, by the way, are more rare than steals. So to me, blocks are actually devalued a tad against the other defensive stat. So when I hear those numbers, the thing that pops into my head is you want a ball-dominant guy, somebody who's scoring. Guys that are actually assist-first, pass-first players are wildly, wildly undervalued in his league, meaning there's sort of no reason to get them unless you're just filling a spot. You want your point guard to be a scoring point guard, and then if you're thinking about it from the double-double standpoint, and again, DeMarcus Cousins being number 1 is a good example of it, yeah, he does other things, because Boogie is a first or second round guy at the very latest, but a big man that scores and rebounds in this league is actually more valuable than a big man who does other things. And Vince, you and I were texting after we got that question about some of the other big guys in the NBA, and I actually said, and I may think I'm paraphrasing a little bit, screw DeAndre Jordan, because he's a rebound and block big guy. I'd rather have somebody like Enes Kanter, who scores and rebounds and doesn't do anything defensively, because points are so much more valuable. And doesn't that seem insane to think of Enes Kanter as a better value than some of these tremendous defensive big guys, but that's the case in this league. And since that league, when you're sorting your players in a Yahoo or an ESPN league, they're not going to sort them by what actually is best for your individual league. They're going off the standard numbers. So you have an opportunity to get an advantage by ignoring the traditional values of guys and looking for where certain stats are advantageous. So, to Josh, to talk to you directly, Enes Kanter is, I think, a good example of a guy that's going to be way better in his league than a 9-category rotisserie league.
Yeah, but the reason why I brought up a guy like DeAndre Jordan, and I don't think you were paraphrasing. No, I really do think you said screw DeAndre Jordan. But you look at that, and it's you ran down what his point structure was. There's no reason why you can't pick DeAndre Jordan. They don't bring up field goal percentage. They don't bring up free throw percentage. Last year he averaged 13 points and 13 rebounds. Double-doubles are 3 points, I think he says in his league.
Yeah.
So he's going to get you a double-double. He's going to get you at least 3 blocks. That's another, 6 points. He can possibly get you a steal. Add another 2. That's 8 points just in the defensive categories. I mean, you're getting arguably, a third or fourth round guy in DeAndre Jordan. And now he's, I would say, even more valuable if his percentages do not matter. And he actually gets good field goal percentage, but that free throw percentage doesn't matter. And even if he can make 50%, 60% of his free throws, he's still getting you points because he's going to have the opportunity to get to the free throw line so many times. He just has to find a way to knock them down and get himself more points. Because if you get into the free throw line 18 times, what you know is going to happen at least once this season, knock down at least 9 of those bad boys. And then that's an extra 9 points to the 12 points he can get from Chris Paul lobbing it up to him and him dunking it down.
Yeah, the reason that I was sort of erring away from someone like that is that I think DeAndre Jordan, he's not going to go nearly as early this year because of that the free throw punting situation. But he was getting drafted pretty early last year. And I know I'll just keep using Kanter because that was the example I used a moment ago. He was drafted in the very late rounds. He was, I think, a maybe 12th or even later. He might have been a waiver wire guy in some leagues. And under this system, he actually is pretty valuable because he was scoring 13 points a game in only 20 minutes last year. So with a little bit of an increased role, you're talking about a guy that in a league that does favor scoring like that one and rebounding and sort of to some degree ignores. And that's the thing. Getting 6 points for 3 blocks is great, but it should be more based on the frequency of a block happening. A guy like DeAndre Jordan should be valued higher than he actually will be in that league. So if you were to stack them head-to-head, yeah, Jordan's probably going to get you more points on a night-to-night basis, but he's also probably, and I'm talking about last year now, he was probably going to get drafted 8-9 rounds ahead of the other guy, and it's just not that big of a difference. So in your league, Josh, and if anybody else out there is playing in a league like that one, just remember to make that adjustment and count the points. Do your math before the season starts. Look at what a guy did, count it up, and figure out why certain numbers are the way they are. So that's my take on that one. But, Vince, that's not the only goofy league. I think that this is a topic that people need to really be aware of, and certainly we are going to cover your standard 8 and 9 category leagues. But in head-to-head in particular, Vince, aren't things just a little bit different on a strategy standpoint?
In just regular head-to-head leagues?
Yeah, I mean, don't you draft a little bit differently? Don't you set your team up a little bit differently?
Yeah, you set it up to how many categories you're going through. So if it's 9-cat, I mean, it's all about believing in the punt strategy. And do you believe it's good for a team, and do you believe it's bad for a team? Are you an 8-cat? Are you a 9-cat? Are you how many cats do you have in your league? Are you a point? Are you a roto? I mean, it just kind of really depends. And with it's head to head in the 8 to 9-cat leagues, I mean, I draft for balance. So I want to make sure that I have the potential to beat you 9-0 or 8-0 every single week. I draft for balance.
So you do you ever punt in a head-to-head league? Anything, any category at all?
If I see players slipping, like let's say I'm in the 5th round, and there's a guy like DeAndre Jordan there, and my team needs blocks and needs rebounds, maybe I'll just punt free throws and then I'll find a way to just build that. But in roto leagues, I mean, once you once you have something that you're punting, it's really hard to find that comeback, especially with a guy like DeAndre Jordan on your team. It's hard to find a way to win in roto leagues when you're punting. So you just have to know your league. We've talked about that so many times. You have to know your league. You have to know what tendencies your players have and build around what your league structure is, because you want to exploit the weaknesses of how your league is structured. So
Yeah.
if it's a 9-cat league and if I'm punting free throws, I better be able to know I'm stacked in at least 5 other departments, so I'm winning 5-4 no matter what.
So I'm in a roto league. I think you and I are basically on the same page. I don't think that I would ever suggest punting in a rotisserie league. It just, you can't afford to get a 1 in one category unless you are just so dominant in so many others and that's just not usually the case. If you're in a league that's even marginally competitive, you're gonna have a pretty big problem winning a bunch of them and then getting your butt kicked in one, because punting one category doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to win all the others in a rotisserie league, because it counts up over the year. You have to deal with injuries that all sort of accumulate in that long 5.5, 6 month stretch, where I am also with you, Vince. In a head-to-head league, there are certain scenarios where I might consider it, and I did it last year in my goofy league. I'm in a head-to-head league that's 11 category instead of 9, where it includes, I believe it's field goals made is one of the other ones that's included, and free throws made. Instead of just the percentages, you're given value for total buckets and total free throws, which, by the way, it's not that dissimilar from Josh's league, where it does then overvalue scoring. Somebody that gets to the line and makes a lot of them is valuable, but somebody gets to the line and even makes some of them is valuable. And certainly for field goal percentage, somebody that's shooting a lot.
So a guy like
better.
James Harden is very valuable in your type of league, since he gets to the free throw line every time he drives the basket.
Absolutely. I actually took James Harden second in that league, and I don't feel bad about it. Obviously, looking back, the opportunity to draft Steph Curry, yeah, that could eat me up a little bit inside, but Harden was a monster in that league. The times that he gets to the free throw line, I knew that that's how things were, and later on in the draft, I kind of snuck DeMar DeRozan maybe a half round earlier than he normally was going, just because I knew with those two guys, I'd locked up a category. And that's a weird combination to think that you've been able to lock up a cat with two guys, but it's a different league, and that's where you have to know your personnel, know your league, and understand how you can get that advantage. So, but yes, in the process, Vince, I kind of punted field goal percentage. I ended up with a lot of guys that shot a lot and got fouled and got to the line, and they scored a lot, and they made threes, and they assisted, and they had steals because they were always involved in the play. But they were chucking. This was a team of chuckers. And in an 11-category league, punting one category is not the worst thing in the world. In a 9-category league, it's a little more dicey. And then in 8, well, at that point, you just can't. You can't do it. There just aren't enough categories left in an 8-cat league where you can get away with throwing one away. That's my stance on it, Vince. I don't know if you feel similarly or different in any of those.
No, I think we agreed about everything. I mean, it's really hard to punt in 8-cat leagues because, like you said, there's not enough categories to make that up. In 9-cat leagues, I think you have the ability to possibly punt one category, and it just depends on how your draft kind of plays out. Like, excuse me, but I do remember punting free throw percentage.
I want to specify head to head is this discussion right now.
Yeah, head to head, and like 2 years ago, I was in a head to head 9-cat, and maybe it was even last year. I drafted DeAndre Jordan in the 5th. He slid that far, and I needed the blocks, and what happened was I was losing because I kept losing in that one department, and I kept trying to balance out my roster, and I won a couple here and there. But then what happened is I saw someone put Andre Drummond on the block, And so I went and got Andre Drummond, and I dominated rebounds, and I dominated field goal percentage, and I got a little bit more scores, and I would win 5-4 almost every week by just punting that one category away.
See, now that worked because you were able to get the key guys that were all terrible in one stat and made up for it in others. But having only one of those guys, that probably wouldn't have been enough for you, right?
It just makes it a lot harder,
Yeah.
and it puts a lot more pressure on your other players to make sure they don't have bad nights, and they're going to have bad nights because not everyone's going to play 82 games at such a high level and play perfect games for an 82-game season.
By the way, Vince, that's impressive. I have to tip my cap because most people that punt late like that, usually it ends up burning them. But you were able to get a guy from earlier in the draft via trade and sort of make up for it. If you decide to punt halfway through a draft, you're probably going to get clobbered in most cases.
Yeah, I thought it was going to happen, and I crawled my way into the playoffs in that league, and I believe I lost in like the second round.
Yeah, but still, I mean, the fact that you were able to make that surge comeback to be able to get a guy like Drummond halfway through. Anyway, I think that the synopsis on all this, the Cliff's Notes version is, don't punt in a Roto league. You'll get killed. Don't punt in an 8-category league, regardless of what the categories are and what type of league it is, you will lose. In a 9, you better plan way ahead of time. You better go into that thing, and you better have your eye on all the guys that are going to slip because nobody else is punting. It's like shooting the moon in a game of hearts. And an 11-category league or points leagues or things like that where certain things are just sort of knocked off the table, it almost isn't even punting anymore because there are so many ways that you can get points. So that's, by the way, your Fantasy NBA Today thoughts on goofy leagues, different leagues, and punting all rolled into one. Vince, final thoughts before we take a 2-day hiatus.
If you guys are going to punt 9-cat leagues, suggestion for players would be DeAndre Jordan, Andre Drummond, and Andrew Bogut in the later half of your rounds.
Yeah, well, Bogut you could snatch up pretty late. There are a few other guys out there that I reckon people are probably avoiding. And that, of course, by the way, Vince, you're talking about punting free throws.
Yeah, you're punting free throws, but those guys also get you a rare stat, or not a rare stat, but a hot stat to get, which is blocks.
Yeah.
Bogut happens to get you assists from the center position, and he's someone that you can target at the later part of your drafts, and then you're still filling up that need of punting one category in head-to-head 9-cat leagues. But again, like you said, Dan, it's not something that I totally recommend. Just because punting, you have to strategize for it the day your draft is there. In 8-cat leagues, I wouldn't recommend it. It's too hard to win 5-3 or 4 or whatever to 4-3 because there's not enough categories to punt one. And then in Roto leagues, once you punt a category, you have to be extremely dominant everywhere else. So
yeah,
I think anything higher than that, you just have to find the strengths and weaknesses of your league and exploit it as fast as possible.
Dwight Howard, Clint Capella get sort of a secondary nod in if you're punting free throw percentage, although I don't really like Dwight Howard as much of a for many purposes. And Rudy Gobert, actually, not the world's worst free throw shooter, but 57%, that can drag you down a little bit as well, just to kind of be aware of some of those guys. And that'll be that. Vince, it's good to be basketball first again over here. I feel like I've been given a shot in the arm. I don't know how to describe it. I'm just wide awake now.
I think what it is we're back.
We're back, baby.
And just like the Monster Energy drinks, we're about to unleash the beast.
Yeah, well, hopefully people have patience because my beast is still cinched in tight. And we'll unleash it as the season approaches. Folks, thanks so much for listening. Again, Fantasy NBA Today is the podcast. Hoop-ball.com is the website. Dan Bespers on Twitter, VM Center on Twitter, Hoopball Tweets on Twitter. Have a wonderful couple of days. We'll get back at you on Thursday. So long, everybody.
This has been a Hoop Ball presentation.